Welcome to Show Money, the only show exclusively dedicated to the business of mixed martial arts. As always, we've got Jason Cruz, our lawyer, John Nash, the man who knows everyone and everything in MMA, and I'm Paul Gift, the economist. Today, we were a little bit behind in our last show. It was one day too late when this McGregor news hit. So we're going to be current and talk about all things business related with Mayweather and McGregor going down August 26th, Saturday, 12 rounds, 154-pound weight class. And our first question is, what kind of business do we think it'll do? Jason, start it off.
It's going to do really good business. I think that there's just enough mainstream appeal, broad appeal, that the gate is going to be incredible. It's a T-Mobile, correct? Yeah, it's T-Mobile. So it'll definitely, smash whatever the gates records would be. I think it'll do great on pay-per-view. I don't know if it will exceed the Pacquiao-Mayweather pay-per-view buy rate. I think there will still be a group of people. A group of people that will be hesitant to pay what will probably be $125 for this fight. So there's that. But overall, I think it'll be a boon for the state of Nevada. I mean, you're going to have a lot of people coming in from Ireland, Europe, whatever to do it, to see the fight. John, what do you think?
I think you're right. It's going to be a massive business. It's going to do massive business for us in the MMA media. They're going to love the traffic. We're going to milk it as much as possible. We're going to be 24/7 Mayweather-McGregor for the next 6 weeks, 2 months, I should say. So that's so for our point of view, it's great. I don't think, again, I agree with you, Jason. I don't think it's going to do I find it hard to believe it'll do as well as Pacquiao, Mayweather, especially at the gate. People are talking about it's going to do better at the gate because all the Irish fans and it's MMA and UFC. I mean, MMA and boxing, UFC and boxing. But people forget, generally boxing does bigger gates than MMA does. And one of the reasons they have bigger, older guys that have tons of money, the whales that show up. And for Pacquiao, there was something special. Pacquiao drew a lot of Asian whales. I mean, these guys from Asia, just, huge, not just the people said the Philippines, but Chinese, Japanese, there were fan base. He had a big fan base in Asia that would fly in, Macau, that, these are multi-millionaire, billionaire type guys that would spend a ton. And, so that's what jacked up the price of those tickets. I don't think this will do well, but I predict it'll do, I would estimate 35, 40 million at the gate. Pay-per-view, again, I find it hard to believe it'll beat Pacquiao Mayweather just because that was just a colossal, monstrous hit. And I know from people that were working on this fight for a while, this fight's been in the works for a while, that the conservative estimate for the guys planning it was 3 million pay-per-view buys. So I think it'll do great, like over 3 million, which, a lot of people might be disappointed for some reason if it only did that. But I think it's going to do over 3 million. So it's monster. We're talking hundreds of millions of revenue generated for the guys involved.
Yeah, my guess is to put a number out there, 3.5 to 3.7 million. That's what I'm guessing.
Buys, pay-per-view buys?
Pay-per-view buys. Because the last one just felt like almost like a cultural phenomenon. And with the kind of letdown of Mayweather-Pacquiao, I don't know if people are going to get as hyped up for this, especially since, everybody who knows anything about these sports knows that McGregor should be losing relatively badly probably. But on the other hand, you've got two sports coming together where maybe that will generate more buys, perhaps. And the only other thing I was going for is it's August, late August. The other one was in May, and you had Spurs Clippers Game 7, you had NHL playoffs, you had all these things going on that maybe pulled away from it a little bit. Late August, think about August, like you're so sports starved, nothing is going on except for baseball. I think that's the day that college football actually starts. I could see the gate going either way, but I think I'm with you guys. I think it's a little bit lower, and I'm going 3.5 to 3.7.
I'll tell you the one thing that they match for sure, 100%. I think they'll match Mayweather-Pacquiao on is the pay-per-view price. I think they go again for that $100 price, just under 100, $99.95 for the HD. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I agree. I tend to agree.
Yeah, it seems you don't want them charging even more for Mayweather-McGregor than they did for Mayweather-Pacquiao. That just wouldn't seem to fit. So, John, how do you think this whole thing got made?
Well, off the air, Jason brought up a good point, and the big question that we should be asking is, how did it get made? Considering, I guess, how did the commissions approve it? First of all, how did any commission approve this? Considering, first, I'm going to come out right away and say I am not going to play the game that a lot of other MMA reporters are saying, where they try to pretend that Mayweather might have a chance, that they can't totally write him off, that in the grand scheme of things, of everything he's accomplished, that just maybe he'll pull this off too. No, he has no chance, people. He has absolutely no chance. I mean, yeah, sure, he has the same chance Homer Simpson had to beat Drederick Tatum. That's basically the chance he has, that he is a man who, while skilled in boxing compared to most people, he has never had a serious boxing match at a high level, and he's taking on the greatest boxer of his generation. In a ring, under boxing rules, with 10-ounce gloves. I see no feasible way for him to win outside of Mayweather's heart skipping during the middle of the match, or maybe a bee stings Mayweather in the eye and has an allergic reaction, and the fight is canceled. But beyond that, he has no chance, and that's the first thing I had to get. But anyways, how do they get it made? That's I guess that's the big question. Obviously, a lot of work. It's very surprising, considering the UFC would rejected in the past any sort of deal like this co-promotion. Remember when Fader and Brock were talking a fight, and Fader reportedly was willing to come over for a one-fight deal, and the UFC at the time thought they could sell out Dallas Cowboys Stadium and would beat UFC 100 pay-per-view sales, but they refused that. They were not willing to give in on that. So I guess the question is, why? First, I'll ask you, Paul, why do you think the UFC has agreed to loan out, the co-promote, even though maybe their name's not on anything, to work with Mayweather on this fight?
So wait, let me go back for a second. You don't even give him a puncher's chance?
What the hell's a puncher's chance? He's been in the ring. He's been in the ring with Pacquiao, with Madonna, with Mosley, with Oscar De La Hoya, with JMM. Well, JMM's not a huge power puncher, so much smaller. But Berto, he's been in the ring with the best boxers in the world. The last 15 years he's been fighting. Winky Wright, who wasn't a great power but great defense. I mean, he's been in the ring against guys that were fighting the elite of the elite for the last 15 years. And I'm supposed to expect a guy, because he has a karate stance, that he's going to knock him out. The guy that has not been touched by anybody, a karate stance, took him out. Look at that.
I just wanted to egg you on and see you go off a little bit. But what things you were saying is what I call John Jones toe chance, right?
Yes.
But we'd have to convert it to boxing. The John Jones toe against Chael Sonnen, right? If the ref had seen it, maybe yeah, some freak rolled ankle or who knows what.
Tears an ACL, something like that. Yeah.
I think he has a slight puncher's chance. I give a slight puncher's chance, and then John Jones toe. That's where I go. But okay, what was the question again?
How was it made?
Yeah, why do you think the UFC? Well, I'll just say too. The only thing interesting about this fight to me, and the only reason anybody should be it, is the pure ludicrousness of and the business side. And we're covering the business side. If you want to get the breakdown of the fight, there's plenty of idiots out there going to touch that. We will leave that to them. We're going to break the business down. But I was asking you, why do you think the UFC agreed to this, considering their past history of being vehemently, ever since they got on Tough and after they worked with Pride one time, they've been vehemently against any sort of co-promotion or lending their name, brand, fighters to other major endeavors.
Right. Well, as an economist, I think the easiest answer could be the one that you could give for almost everything: money, right? But first off, this doesn't seem to be a co-promotion, right? It feels like they're staying out of it. They might have they probably definitely have some contract behind the scenes as to how they get money for it. But it feels to me like McGregor is signed with Mayweather Promotions for one fight, and the UFC is completely out of it on the boxing end. That's what it feels like to me. But in terms of how it got made, I mean, are they motivated with the WEIMG thing, with the loans, or the earnouts or earnbacks? Why am I slipping on the name of it? Earnouts, yeah. that you had identified. But one reason I think it happened so fast, though, is that as opposed to Mayweather-Pacquiao, is McGregor, right? You need to book this in a tighter schedule. He's at kind of the height of his fame. you can't sort of let this thing go for 3 years in the world of MMA. It seems like, you know, with all the fights that he wants to do, there's a decent chance he'll start losing more. And will he still be very popular? Yes, but with Floyd getting older and with sort of the need for speed here with McGregor where he's at, seemed to be a little bit of an impetus as to why it happened. I'll let you guys talk about what you think on the WME side or whatever else you want to say. What do you think, Jason?
You know, I think that, you know, Brian Campbell tried to bring that up at the press conference and was soundly told he was asking a stupid question by Dana White, although it wasn't a stupid question because it definitely has to do with the new ownership. I think new ownership, fresh ideas, and definitely it's a money thing. It's all about the money. Why would you risk having one of your top stars do a crossover event? It makes no sense if you are thinking about your own sport to go over into boxing, aside from the fact that it'll make tons and tons of money. So yeah, of course it was gonna get made. I was surprised, however, of how smoothly everyone says the negotiations went, simply because you know, these are guys who are very contentious deal makers and such, and it seemed like it took less than I mean, it definitely was less than Pacquiao Mayweather, and it took less than a month or so for it all to get handled. And that was amazing to me. Obviously, there are some guidelines here, and with that being, one thing should be made clear here is that Floyd Mayweather is the overarching guy that's pulling the strings. He's making the moves. Without him, there is no super fight here with Conor McGregor. I mean, if he didn't get the concessions he wanted, show time, 10-ounce gloves, things like that, I don't think it happens. Obviously, he is not fighting at the MGM Grand. It's at a higher weight limit. So, you know, those are things that he appears to have conceded.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Paul, Paul, one thing you said, the UFC better be a promoter in this. Otherwise, they're acting as the manager for McGregor. That'd be a violation of the Ali Act. So we better. My guess is they are the promoter on this, but the promoter of record is Mayweather Promotions.
So what I was getting at, my guess is that they don't have to be a promoter. They could have just made a deal to release McGregor and allowed him to fight, and because of that deal, gotten money and a percentage of whatever. I don't think they have to be a promoter in this. So they are. It's not that they can't be, but
that can't be the case because they're actually said they're negotiating the deal. They're negotiating the fight. So that's the part. They can't go in and say they can negotiate a deal. That's why they negotiated first with Conor and signed him to a new deal with the UFC, I believe, because then they can go to Mayweather and say, okay, here's the deal. You give us whatever, and it's his slice, and you'll get that. They can't go and say, well, listen, Conor's going to fight you. We're going to negotiate his contract and get a percentage of that. That would be under Nevada law and under the Ali. That's bold. Right. That's a violation.
Well, there's two theories that I have there. So under the Ali Act, I had looked at it before we talked today, and the definition of promoter is the primary promoter. So it would be so Showtime is a primary promoter. So if you're going to look at the finite language of the Ali Act, if the UFC, if we claim that the UFC is a promoter, they wouldn't be the primary one. It would be Showtime. Aside from that, when negotiating with McGregor,
but can I correct you, Jason? It'd be Mayweather Promotions is the primary promoter. Showtime's the broadcaster.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah. Mayweather.
I just want to correct you on that. I correcting you. So I just want to get that in there.
I was going to. I just thought he was being brilliant in some way.
I was on a roll, and you never know when the internet's going to crap out. But I also think that when they negotiate with McGregor, he could assign his rights for the UFC to negotiate on his behalf, and also include their language in which he could say that none of this circumvents the Ali Act. And certainly, you know, here's the thing. There's only two ways to sue under the Ali Act. Two entities can sue. That would be the state or a governmental entity, or the fighter themselves under a private right of action. So if McGregor agrees to the contract with the UFC, knowing how much money he's going to get, he's not going to be a guy who's going to sue unless there is something down the line that's breached. And I doubt the state of Nevada is going to sue here because of all of the income coming into the state. So that's just one theory. I don't have any inside information on that, but there are ways to circumvent the Ali Act in those types of ways.
Yeah, well, I think, yeah, I don't expect it to come into play. I'm just saying that would be a violation. And
yeah.
in fact, the UFC might be in such a rush to get this done. They don't care because they don't expect Nevada to do anything about it. And they don't expect McGregor, who wants to fight, to do anything about it. So they might say,
that's correct.
No one's worried about it. I'm just pointing out it would be a violation.
Exactly. And all I'm saying really quick is I think that the UFC definitely covered their bases on whatever they did, worried about dipping into boxing and maybe being exposed to Ali Act down the line. I'm probably positive they cover their bases.
Well, I'll tell you, speaking how the fight got made, first of all, we should state, and I think we've been talking about this, not on air and stuff, off the air, about for the last 2 years or something, about rumors about this. So when I wrote that article about how could Conor McGregor fight Mayweather without the UFC's permission, that wasn't coming out of left field. That was stuff I was hearing from people. And then Anton Thibodeau from Bloody Elbow said, why don't you write that as an article? So I talked to a bunch of the people I talked to, and only Sam Spears is the only one went on the record, but we brought that, that was stuff I'd kind of hear weird. What I'd heard is people were saying that he was planning to, use the Ali Act to get out and fight Mayweather. And I said, that's impossible. And people said, no, it's not impossible. So I wrote that. So this has been going a while. And part of my thinking is that when McGregor filed that boxing license in California, remember people made a big deal like it was following the blueprint, what I written out earlier. And I think that was intentional. Obviously, it was intentional. And the person that filed on behalf of Mayweather, both me and Paul here can confirm, the person that filed that boxing license in California was Mike Mersch, former UFC, I can't remember his position in the UFC right now. What was his position?
Attorney?
He was
legal?
Assistant General Counsel and something for business affairs. Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, that's obviously when they did that was sending a message to the UFC that they're up to something. And so the question becomes, there's also stories floating around that McGregor was invited to go to D.C. To lobby on behalf of the Ali Act, the Mullen stuff. So if you look at it that way, it's a very strong possibility that McGregor's camp had this leverage over the UFC and said, listen, here's the deal. We can fight you. I can start going to DC and making trouble for you, or we can take you to court. And I can, start following these steps to get through this fight, or you can agree to it and make a bunch of money because you guys need the money. And I think that's a strong possibility too, that was the deciding factor. Because one thing I heard, and I don't know if it's true, but one thing I heard is the UFC didn't seem that enthusiastic at the presser. The people involved at the UFC didn't seem that enthusiastic about putting on this event. They're doing it, but they don't seem that enthusiastic for an event that's going to generate a lot of money. So that's what made me think, well, maybe they're not 100% willing participants in this. But who knows? I don't have that good of insight.
Well, yeah, it did seem like Dana was deferring a lot at the presser yesterday to Showtime and whatever they're going to do, which is interesting because he used to have that big beef with Showtime way back when they took over Strikeforce, and Strikeforce was still on Showtime. But I definitely think that there is a different tone going with the UFC. They're going to promote Conor, but they're not going. I mean, they're keeping that arm's length as far as Mayweather Promotions and Showtime's is the distributor of this pay-per-view. So I'm not sure if they made that explicitly clear in some sort of confidential agreement, how that came about. But it'll be interesting to see.
And that's what makes me think that they're not involved. That they have a piece of money coming by allowing McGregor to go there, but they don't really want to be officially involved. That's just my speculation.
Yeah, I don't. I'm sure they're getting a piece for sure. But again, I got a question. I mean, if McGregor's going to make at least $75 million, I mean, that was what Dana White said, and possibly $100 million. The UFC's cut can't be, $75 million. I mean, that was what Dana White said, and possibly $100 million. The UFC's cut can't be, too big. It could be big still. Let's say it did. I mean, if it did Pacquiao numbers and you got Pacquiao split, that means the UFC, you know, if McGregor got 100 million, the UFC to get about 50 million, which is a lot, but it's not. I mean, if you read the numbers what the UFC makes on the McGregor's big fights, it's not so much more. That's like what they make in 1.5, 2 fights, McGregor fights anyways. So it doesn't seem so great that they'd risk their star for that. That kind of, I mean, unless there's, I thought for sure the UFC was going to finagle a way that they're the broadcasters, they get the HBO broadcasting cut, that they get to put it on Fight Pass, to get the digital fees for that they're going to find a way to monetize this fight a lot more. But it doesn't seem like they're doing that either. And
that's what's so interesting. That's what's so interesting. The deal that seems to have been brokered. Yeah, I could have sworn that worst case scenario would be 50-50 split between McGregor and UFC, and it doesn't look like we have that. So that gets us into how it was structured or good for UFC. We can go through all of this, but here's what I think. I might be jumping ahead a little bit. This is just my theory that that in order to do this, the speculation is will McGregor fight again? I swear, I think Conor McGregor is now like one of those actors who's in the superhero franchise movies, who has like a 4 or 5 fight contract and you can't get out of it. I mean, there are certain ways out of it, but you're not supposed to be able to get out of it. I feel like Conor McGregor has a new contract coming out of this, and he's pretty much guaranteeing them 3 or 4 fights, like no retirement, no nothing. That's what I think is kind of the trade-off for this, and to make sure that he stays in the game. I don't know, it might be crazy, but I think he's locked into some sort of deal where the UFC knows that they're going to have him after his mainstream exposure for at least a few more times. I don't know. Do you guys think it's ludicrous?
I mean, remember I talked about that before, where I thought that the UFC would put in their contract that he would only get the rest of his money from this fight by finishing out his UFC fight, that they would partial out payments from this.
That would work too.
I did, but now I don't know anymore. I don't.
I mean, if I was McGregor's counsel, I would not agree to that at all. I mean, what happens if he gets injured? I mean, then he doesn't get those payments. I mean,
you can't get rid of injuries, but you could say no retirement, or if you retire, you could do a reverse. That if you retire at certain times, you owe us a certain amount of money back. But you don't think they're protecting themselves in some way?
I did before, but not. I think now, the way this went down and the way it sounds, again, that's why I go back to maybe they caved in more to that. I thought that was BS pressure that he was putting on when he was doing that filing for the California license, because, you know, he wasn't going, I thought he's not going through with this. It doesn't seem like he's taking it far enough to actually make it a serious threat. But now you look at what happened. It's like, well, maybe there was something more to it than we thought. They were, you know, that they felt compelled that they had to. I would think they would have put it in that that he'd make him return. I don't think. I mean, people are like, well, he'll come back because UFC will start paying him tens of millions, but that breaks the UFC business model, because they want to make 300. We already know from their prediction they want to make 300 million a year in profits. They're not going to do that by paying him more. So,
well, here's the deal: if you're making 10 million a year and someone offered you $100 million, and the trade-off was you had to lock yourself in and guarantee not to retire for 3 more fights, let's just put 3 out there.
That's illegal to do, to guarantee someone to.
Is it to say no retirement?
No, to say it's guaranteed. The force, that's forcing people to fight. That's breaking the 14th Amendment. You know, that literally is. That's
the 14th Amendment. It is.
Oh, there's injuries in there.
You cannot force you to compel someone to work. That's the whole argument in sports franchise. You know, the sports contract.
Okay. To take whatever those deals are. Whatever those deals are that the actors sign, the whatever 4 fight.
Well, yeah, but they have a set number of fee they're going to get paid for fight. So that's why I was thinking that the UFC was going to take his money and say, you're only going to get 25 million for this fight, but the remaining 75 million you make, it's going to be partialed out over your next 3 fights. So we're going to give you a $25 million bump on each of your next 3 fights. But the way they make it sound, it's like he's going to walk away with 100 million. If he walks away with 100 million, then there's nothing else they can give him later. They can't, reserve that money later. So I think you're crazy. Let's put it that. I don't know how to finish that sentence in a polite way, but
I disagree. You could lock it in. You could say, if you don't complete these fights, you owe us this much money back. There is a way We have a lawyer right there.
If that happens, there would be a lawsuit if that happens.
There is a
to be
way.
honest with you, but I think that you guys are making sense, believe it or not, because I think my initial thought was if he gets 100 million, I'd be out of the game, like he had said on his Instagram post or whatever. I mean, there's no reason to go back for $2 million a fight. I mean,
he makes a lot.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah, best estimates are probably people say 20. Probably the stuff I've heard coming from pretty good sources, 8 to 10 million a fight right now.
I mean, but yeah, 100 million to back down to 10, that doesn't seem like a fair exchange. Now, definitely, the UFC could have put something in writing saying that he comes back for 2, maybe 3 fights, or by the end of 2019. To ensure this other payment coming in, because again with the fights thing, what if his opponent gets injured, blah blah blah, and that money's just sitting in the bank. You have to put a timeline on this thing, so they ensure the payments at some point down the road.
See, that's the way I just needed my lawyer to speak for me. Yes.
Well, that makes a little more sense.
I'm just saying that these are. I mean, I didn't say that those are guaranteed. That's guaranteed payments. I'm just saying that they could incentivize him to come back by adding additional money by a certain point in time. I don't think it's going to be. If I was the lawyer there, I mean, there are smarter lawyers than I out there. That's an understatement. But
that is not true. There's no smarter lawyer around.
We haven't been tested on that. But definitely, you would put some timeline saying by the end of 2018, he's payment in full of whatever incentives that he achieved, or 3 fights. Something one or the other. I mean, because the uncertainty of the nature. I mean, imagine if he had to fight Khabib or something like that, and the guy comes, he's ready, he goes down, he goes, that kind of thing. I mean, you have to make sure that there's some timeline there for him to receive payment. So that's all I'm saying.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, here's a question since we brought all this stuff up. We know what the Pacquiao Mayweather split was like. What do you think the split is between Mayweather and the UFC? The Mayweather promotes the UFC, and what do you think the split is between the UFC and McGregor? Paul, we'll start with you since you have that look of like you don't know what to say.
Now, I honestly, I thought it would be a Pacquiao deal, 60-40, and then the UFC and McGregor would negotiate over the 40. That's what I thought, and come up to somewhere around 20-20. That's what I originally thought. Now it feels to me that it's more like 2/3, 1/3. Somewhere around there, or at least on the minimum guarantee, and then maybe they change it with the extra percentages. And it feels like the UFC is getting maybe, I don't know, half of what McGregor gets or something like that. That's my best guess, but that's what it seems. But they're going to benefit off of the mainstreamification of the 2.5 months of mainstream publicity.
So when you say 2/3, 1/3, how does that equate? Is that 75-25? I'm bad with numbers.
66
Which one is the alligator going at?
66 and 2/3 to 33.
Yeah, I definitely think whatever Mayweather-Pacquiao was, I think that Mayweather side improved on that. So that would be 65-35, whatever that is, with the 35 going. Did that add to 100? 65-30.
You're like so close to 2/3, 1/3. You just can't go there.
Actually, I think the reverse though. I think there's a chance the UFC got a better deal than Pacquiao, simply because one thing is Mayweather wants this. Not that he wants to fight so bad, but he sees he has a limited window of opportunity. This is an easy fight. This is the only fight where he's going to make over 100 million. So he wants it, and he knows it's a cakewalk. There's no risk involved. On the side of McGregor's side, is that where Pacquiao had just got a loss from JMM and Marquez, and was basically his value was starting to go down. This was really his last big fight he could take and get himself back on track. The UFC, they can kind of hold. That's just me thinking. Who knows? It might be the reverse. They might have caved in and Mayweather's going to walk away with 79% of everything, and and little McGregor is going to know that he's paying the hotel bill at the end. He has no clue. We don't know, but I just think they did slightly. I'm thinking they did better in a little over 40%, maybe 45, up to 45. Mayweather's so arrogant about this. He got the majority no matter
Oh yeah, no. Again, yeah, he's the overarching figure in this whole thing. So he improves. I am surprised that they did get the T-Mobile thing versus MGM Grand, because that's where Mayweather. That's like his home, whatever. But I guess the UFC. Maybe, I mean, maybe that was an easy concession because that's the UFC's home. Maybe Mayweather gets partial of the gate as well, or merchandise, something like that. I mean, the only thing that maybe that the UFC and McGregor also could exploit maybe is the international rights there. I don't know. That seems to be something that in prior negotiations Mayweather has been fine with. He's okay with domestic.
So here's another question for you, Jason. Do you think this is good? Was this going to be good for the UFC? Is this going to be good for MMA?
You know, I think here's what I think. I think the press conferences and the lead up to this will be beneficial for the UFC and the UFC brand, because it'll bring out a character and bring out more mainstream exposure than it is getting right now. So I think from that perspective, and then you'll get his whole story about, he was on welfare 4 years ago, and now look at him now, he's a self-made man. Look at his cute baby, things of that nature. And then I think from that perspective, you'll get some good publicity for the UFC. People might be turning into UFC. I think that the UFC will barrage, do a lot more to get that in there. The embedded episodes will be crazy. The shoulder programming around it will be crazy. Now, on fight night, August 26th, how will that look if Mayweather just clowns them for 10 rounds, or there's nothing happening? Yeah, that could be bad for the brand. Obviously, Dana White was very adamant in saying that this is actually, everything is good for the brand. Even if he loses, it's good for the brand. To a certain point, I can agree with that, but I just, in the end, it depends on how he fares. If he lasts and he puts if he gets a couple punches in, then he'll look like a hero. But if it's total, if it's a snooze fest and Mayweather dominates, I don't know what it says for the casual viewer. Basically that they were duped again.
Yeah. I can't be sure, but it feels like yes, because Mayweather-McGregor led PTI today. It led PTI, and MMA, no matter how popular it is always like in their last segment of the day, and all of a sudden it's leading it. And we have 2.5 months of this. Not going to be leading it every day, of course, but 2.5 months of the most mainstreamification that they've ever seen is coming. And so, like Jason says, as long as he doesn't get knocked out in the first punch, which is virtually impossible to happen in a Floyd Mayweather fight, what's more likely is, that's the question though, not who's going to win. Is he going to get knocked out in what round, right? Or is he going to make it to the end? But as long as he doesn't absolutely, utterly embarrass himself, all the hardcore boxing and MMA fans, they know what's supposed to happen. The casual fans might laugh at it when he looks silly, probably. And they might laugh at it, but they're still being exposed to UFC and MMA for 2.5 months, and they're going to be curious. And it feels like on net, it's probably got to be good for the sport.
I think our buddy Cardiff Garcia from Financial Times, I don't know if he watches the show, but he reads their stuff. He brought up a name drop in there, people. But he brought up to me the interesting point about, not interesting, but his fear. He thinks it could be a positive, but he's also afraid that there's so many risks involved. Because what if Conor goes out there and he looks like Ronda Rousey versus Amanda Nunes? He gets beaten, maybe he doesn't get knocked out in the first round, but for 3 rounds he's just clowned and pummeled. Well, and first of all, are the fans gonna be upset? All these casuals that know nothing about it, are they gonna be upset that they felt like they got gypped, that they got ripped off, that scammed on this? And if that's the case, who do they blame? The risk is both. It's not just MMA. The risk could be boxing too. Like, another shitty boxing match. This is what boxing's like. That's why they might say, this is what happens when you do boxing because the rules are so limited. And an MMA cage, anything goes. We would have seen a much better fight. So it might help UFC that way. But the other way, people might say, MMA fighters are a joke. They're not talented. They're goons. And look at the real art is boxing. And the next thing you know, Canelo, Triple G just made an extra 400,000 pay-per-view buys. I doubt that too, but there's a possibility. There's a wide range. There is a lot of risk, I think, involved in this, letting this fight go forward. The risk is probably offset by the great amount of money they expect to make, but still, I think there's a risk.
Yeah. McGregor, yeah, I mean, I agree. But
I mean, the other big risk is, does McGregor fight again after this? After you thought you had the whole theory why they're going to force him to fight, but
we already know he's locked into at least 3 fights. Book it.
It's $100 million. Let's say he makes $100 million on this. This is what's going to happen. This is not. This is me just speaking out of my ass and making stuff up as I go along here. But so no one take this for verbatim. But at the end of it, he's going to rip up his UFC contract and declare himself a boxer if he does a decent job. And then basically repeat the whole thing again, where he's going to threaten the UFC. Basically let it known that if he doesn't get another boxing match, that he'll book it himself, and through the Ali Act try to get out of it, and they'll book it. In other words, he'll force to be making, if he does anywhere remotely passable, he'll try to book another boxing match and make tens of millions.
Against who though?
I don't know. Who knows? Who's the next guy down the list that wants to box him?
Wait, did you condition that on him not embarrassing himself? Is that
I said as long as he has a somewhat presentable showing.
All right.
Like let's say he goes 5 or 6 rounds, he loses, he gets hit, and maybe they call he quits on the bench in between 6th and 7th round because he gets beat up badly. But the general masses don't view it as him getting completely demolished because just the way Mayweather fights, it's so defensive that he doesn't get. But something like that, then he comes back and says, "I'm going to box again. I'm not going back to the UFC for what you're going to pay me. We're going to box again." And we'll pick someone else. He could box in Ireland at that point. They could set something up there. I'm sure he could sell out a Croke Park.
Oh yeah,
yeah. They could put him against someone in Ireland, some UK boxer that's a big enough draw. That's maybe doesn't make as much as Groves.
He would. He would be living in the courtroom after that, getting his ass sued like crazy.
Again, but again, he's going to give UFC the option. They can go along with it, or so. I'm just throwing that out. Again, people, that's just me. I'm fantasy booking for, as the pro wrestling fans say. I just want to make sure we have more to talk about after the fight. So, Jason, you think he's going to fight again or not, Jay? We didn't get your confirmed statement.
Yeah. I really think he probably will fight again. What is he, 27, 28? I think it's going to happen. I just think that there's nothing left for. There's after the boxing, he'll probably want to come back for one more time to defend the title. Maybe he wants to go up to 170 to challenge for that title. Maybe GSP is in the offing, some big fight thing like that. But I just, if I were him, I would take the $100 million and go. But again, you're 28. What else are you going to do with your life?
I'll say the one thing I think this is a strong possibility too. If he does come back to MMA, he's not going to get what he made in this type of number. But if he does come back, because he's sitting on, now tens of millions of dollars, it's very feasible for him to say, I am only going to come back if you do pay me that 20 million that I really wanted before. You've double, triple my pay that I was getting before, and I will come back. If you don't, I got plenty of money to retire on, and I consider, and at that point, William Morris like, well, that breaks our business model. We want to make huge profits to make sure we make the huge profits. But at the same time, we really need him to even come close to hitting those numbers.
So I have 2 questions I have for you guys. But one is, do you think that the UFC just took an audible commitment with him, or do you think there's something in writing about him coming back?
It's got to be something in writing. God.
All right. No, it could be just verbal. It could have just been his words.
I think he has. I think there's no commitment to come back. I think he has a contract. He's got his original contract, and he has this new contract. And maybe it says something like his next bout has to be an MMA bout or something after this. Who knows? But he does not have. There's nothing that's going to guarantee him's coming back, because you can't do that. You can't guarantee someone. You can't force anybody to fight.
Yeah, you could retire with a couple fights still left on your contract. That's just the whole thing. Yeah.
All right, and when he comes back, let's assume he comes back. Do you think he's going to be defending his lightweight belt, or do you think he's just going to be like super fight, money fight hunter? Just going for the biggest fight he can find every single time, no matter what.
Part of it, I think, depends on who they want him to fight. If it's, I think he's good at picking. He's not ducking anybody, but I think he will be picking an opponent that will give him the most money. If there's a lightweight that pops up and he says, "Oh, we got to see this fight," then yeah, I think he would take a lightweight. But if GSP drops down to lightweight and wins the title, wins the interim belt or whatever, he's going to go to lightweight. He's going to choose GSP over Woodley in the second.
Yeah.
If I don't know who else, if Robbie Lawler wins back the welterweight belt at some point, I think he'll choose partly because partly he'll look at it and say that's a better matchup for me, just stylistically. If GSP wins the middleweight belt, he's going to middleweight.
Right. It feels. Oh, so go ahead. Sorry, Jason.
Oh no. I was just gonna say I think he wants to do something that no one's done before. So going to 170. So to say that he is the three-time a champ in three different weight divisions. Even though he's been stripped of the featherweight title, but I mean you get what I'm saying. He wants to do something like that. So yeah, Woodley or GSP would be on the plate at 170. Out there is the Nate Diaz at 155. I'm not sure if he'd want to do that unless he was given big money. But on the other end of that is Nate Diaz, who wants big money as well. So I'm not sure if they're going to do something, some blockbuster fight like that. If they do, they're going to expend a lot of money for that. But those are the two things that I see him doing. He's never going back down to 145. So, and I just don't think he cares about whether or not he defends the 155 unless it makes sense for him money wise.
Right. It feels to me like we'll see him a few more fights. GSP would be one of them. Diaz would be another one, and Ferguson and Nurmagomedov and Khabib aren't his type of fights. There may be one other person, one other big name, and maybe he's gone. It feels like it would just be hunting big fights.
Yeah, you definitely. I mean, that's the only two fights I really see that make sense to him. Possibly the welterweight belt, whoever has the belt at the time, and then GSP and Nate Diaz are the three titles, the three fights that. Maybe again we shouldn't Duffy. We shouldn't underestimate that if they could set up some fight in Ireland. I think that's that would be the wild card. Yeah, that out of nowhere that might come out. Oh, that makes sense because we're going to sell 80,000 tickets in Ireland.
Yeah,
he's the local hero.
Nick could be cool too. I don't know if he fight Nick. I don't know if that would be. It would seem like it would be big, but
that would still be big. I'd still do good. But the big question is, but Conor might, as much as he's bravado and he talks a lot, I do think there's a point where he understands he can't go up that much. There's guys that are so much bigger than him that it's not worth fighting. He's not. His fans might think he can beat anybody up, but I think he's smart enough to know that there's.
Yeah, I mean, I would think somebody like Robbie Lawler might be too big of a guy to.
Robbie's not super big at welterweight, and I just think stylistically Robbie matches up. I imagine him looking at Robbie and saying, "Okay, I have a much better shot than a guy as good as wrestler and as big and strong." I mean, Woodley's not that much bigger height wise, but just thickness wise, strength. You can see that, and he's a grappler, so now you got that problem. And Stephen Wonderboy, I think, would be a length problem. It'd be great to fight a striker, but you're like, holy crap, the reach in this guy and the length of him is just negates my striking advantage over everybody else. So I don't see those matchups being smart. Again, though, the big thing too, I think if he makes a lot of money from this fight, he only comes back. He has the leverage now to literally hold. He can do what all the fighters talk about in the past, where they're going to hold out. He could hold out and say, "You've got to start paying me a lot more money, a big chunk of what you make compared to what you normally pay fighters." For me to come back, and that's also in the UFC might cave because they might think, God, that's the only way we're even come close to making our profit projections that we want to make. So,
see, and the only difference is I think that in order to release them to do this fight, the UFC already negotiated that future. That they're saying we'll let you do this, but this is the deal going forward.
Oh no, I'm sure they did. That doesn't matter though. That doesn't stop people from holding out.
Well, with things to cover that I don't know of because I'm not a lawyer.
You're not. Well, you're willing to break the 14th Amendment, so so that makes it a lot easier when you're willing to do that.
It could be forced or incentivized, my friend. Forced or incentivized.
We talked pretty much. We covered all the ground I think we wanted to cover, except you wanted to bring up. You had a subject about the judges. You had a point to make.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just a quick throwing it out there. I'm wondering about how the judges are going to go for these things. Like you need a legit boxing referee, but and you need boxing judges. But I'm wondering if Adelaide Bird and Glenn Trowbridge are big boxing and MMA judges in Nevada, and they do both. And it's got me wondering if they would insist on boxing only judges, or if boxing judges who have exposure to MMA would be included or sort of forced out of this. I don't know. Do you guys have any theories on that? Huh?
Is there a methodology for how they pick them, or is it just random draw? What's the
in MMA? It's the commissions. I'm not 100% sure if boxing is different. I feel like I've heard something about the promoters having it, not just more than having a say, but I could be wrong. I'm not 100% sure in boxing, but in MMA it's the commission, the executive director for title fights gives the recommendations, and then the commission picks them.
I mean, if it's the promoter's case, it's whoever Mayweather wants as his judges. So I mean, that's what I would think.
I was just wondering if they'd raise a stink if like Adelaide Bird was in there because she has maybe an MMA bias or something like that, even though she's a legit boxing judge.
I hope they go with the worst, most corrupt, blind judges possible that they find, who are that's my hope. And just hit me actually. When I said the 14th Amendment earlier, I meant the 13th Amendment. 14th is about citizenship.
You don't even know your amendments.
I don't. I spaced out on that.
14th Amendment.
This guy's a lawyer and he didn't know.
No, wait. The 14th Amendment has to deal with slavery, doesn't it?
No, that's the 13th Amendment. 14th is citizenship. It granted citizenship to those born in the U.S.
Is that right?
I'm pretty damn sure.
There's no amendment.
You're right. You are correct.
I'm correct. Yes. I was really counting on you, Jason, as the lawyer here, the legal expert. Correct me earlier.
You got 13th as a slavery. Well, it sounded like I was waiting for the people to comment on our post.
Someone's going to just make fun of me now that I don't know what I'm talking about with that. But I meant the 13th Amendment. 13th was the one always cited, and it gets all the fans upset when agents and guys in sports labor guys bring up slavery, and they're referring to the 13th Amendment. It says a long tradition, but as soon as they bring that up, fans in sports will freak out. How dare you compare yourself to a slave? And you're always like, well, they're not really comparing themselves to a real slave. They're comparing themselves to the legal history. There's a legal tradition of using that term. But I would know about that. Jason would, but he didn't. He forgot.
It's late here. Sorry.
Yeah, and there's a storm going on in Seattle apparently. So
there is. It's raining.
Yeah.
All right. So final prediction. Does it go to decision, or does Mayweather win by knockout prior to the decision?
This is a business show. The final prediction should be, how much do you think it'll make?
Well, we already did that.
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay. I'll go first on this because I really don't care about how the fight does because it's unimportant. I think a better rule would be if the rule was the rules of the match should be that they just dump money in the ring, and that way it might be more interesting because Mayweather won't be able to move as well. Maybe McGregor can hit him, and they both might be distracted so much by stuffing money in their pants that one of them would get an opening. So there might be a quicker knockout. So that would be my rule change, but. I think this fight it's going to be an eye opener Mayweather's not going to blitz him like you'd see in MMA where a guy would blitz a boxer, just take him down and beat him up. That's not going to happen, but it's going to be a beating for 4 or 5 rounds before someone throws in the towel or they call the fight, because he's going to hit Mayweather about 10% of the time. They're all going to be deflected off the glove or off the arm. He's not going to get a clean shot. And Mayweather's going to be probably hitting at about a 50% clip, and there are going to be some hard counters coming in there that McGregor's just not going to see coming. He's like a baseball player. No, I should say he's like a cricket batsman walking into the Major League Baseball to take on Clayton Kershaw at the mound. It's not. I don't care how good you were in your sport. You're not going to do well.
Jason, what do you got?
For some reason I envision the lead up to be sort of like the Ricky Hatton, Floyd Mayweather lead up, where the Irish fans are just singing Mayweather's name, like that. And I also envision it ending like Ricky Hatton with Floyd Mayweather. Maybe not him being ran into the turnbuckle, but basically, I think this is going to be stopped in 3 or 4 rounds. So he'll last longer than Hatton, but 3 or 4 rounds, Conor McGregor will receive a beating. There'll be flashes in the first round, like it does all the time. But again, you have to sit back and think no matter how much you hate the guy personally, he is the best boxer of the modern era. And there's no way that his first loss is going to happen to a guy that's boxing record is 0-0.
Wow, we all have a KO. So Mayweather hasn't knocked anybody out since I can't remember, barring the Victor Ortiz hug knockout.
Ricky Hatton was the last one.
Oh, was
Ricky Hatton? Oh, that was off the turnbuckle where he hit him, and then he fell into the turnbuckle.
I think McGregor will fade, and cardio will get to him. I think he's probably prepping that a lot, but it'll get to him. I'm gonna give him until the 8th or 9th round when he finally gets knocked out. Yeah, because I have that little faith in Mayweather's punching power, but it will eventually get there.
I'm not worried about Mayweather. I don't think Mayweather's punching power is gonna be the problem. It's his accuracy,
volume. Yeah.
It's just and even he's not gonna throw a lot, but he's gonna hit so many times clean that it doesn't. When you're walking into, even if he's not throwing the hardest, if you're walking into a punch 10, 20 times a round, that takes a toll. His face is gonna be so. I mean, look at the Gotti fight with. I mean, that might be a repeat of this fight. I mean, look at the face that he had. By the second round, it was swollen and red. He couldn't see anything. And that's what I kind of expect this fight to look like, where he is just McGregor's just cannot comprehend how the punches are fitting through the guard on the gloves. He's just not used to them. Where Mayweather's blocking everything because he's Mayweather spent a life just worried about the waist up and throwing punches. That's all he's done for almost his whole adult life, for almost his whole life. And this is, McGregor's spent a fraction of the time working on that part of the game. Or we will have a new term to coin: Floyd Mayweather's ankle, something like that. Well, I mean, come on, if you win, it's a black swan event. If McGregor wins, if you're familiar with the black swan, the world has changed. And if he wins, if McGregor wins, I'll be the first to go out and buy The Secret, the book. Floyd Mayweather's second round turned ankle so bad that the bone pops out. The ref stops the fight. Boom, McGregor wins. I'm just waiting for McGregor's rematch. You got a rematch. I'm waiting for McGregor's karate stance to confuse Floyd so bad that he gets the punch there and knocks him out. That seems to be everybody's. If that happens, though, then I'm like, okay, that the world makes no more sense. The Secret does work. Conor McGregor does have the ability to project his force of will upon the world and transform it, like the Shaper of the Worlds from Marvel Comics. The cosmic cube, he can twist reality to fit his needs. In that case, I've given up on understanding anything. I believe we're in the Matrix, living in Conor's world, if that happens. So, but you know what, people, it's not going to happen. All right, guys. Any final words? We get no cut of this fight, and that's the saddest part. That is the saddest. We should. But it'll be fun. I guess final words: share and like this video. We need to get it. The 50 people that like it, make sure you get 50 others, and we'll have a 100-man fan base. There we go. Well, I think our next one will be a year in review, a sort of WME year in review sometime in early July. We'll try to get that up there. And on behalf of Jason Cruz and John Nash, I'm Paul Gift. Keep doing business as usual.